Mauryan the way that other people say Mauryan, and she calls, I believe she calls Ashoka, where everyone pronounces it Ashoka, she pronounces it Ahsoka. Because remember on that sheet how it doesn't have the H? So hopefully we get that far. We are going to start. So this emblem, which you'll see in modern day India and a lot of locations, comes from the Mauryan dynasty because, of course, one of my favorite things, elephant warriors. So if anyone wanted to get an elephant and train it to be a warrior, as a humanities project, I'm pretty sure I'd give you all the points.
That'd be awesome. I am on that right now.
All right, so the Vedic Age. I have my notes and they're kind of in a little bit
I
of
feel like
disorder.
you have a thing with elephants.
I love elephants. Did I tell you about the elephant preserve in Tennessee, which you guys can go visit? All right, I have to do a little diversion. All right, I love elephants in Tennessee. Okay, so think about it. I like to think about things like, so if you are a circus elephant, what happens to you at the end of your circus career? Sometimes it's really unfortunate things that happen to elephants, by the way. So they have created an elephant preserve in Tennessee, which is basically like a large farm that has really good fences, because think of how you'd have to fence for an elephant. And elephants go there to spend their final days, basically, because elephants can live a really long time. It's like a parrot. People are like, oh, I want to buy a parrot. That parrot can outlive you. And then they take care of the parrot for a while, and then you'll see a lot of rescued parrots, because people do not realize the time commitment of you're going to have that thing for 60 years as a pet. Think about this. This is American society where we have lots of dogs and cats who last for like 15 years in rescues, because people get a puppy and they forget, oh, puppy's 2 things, and then they get rid of it. So there's this elephant preserve in Tennessee, and here's how I learned about it. There was a nature special on PBS that had these 2 elephants who had known each other 25 years ago. They had been in the same circus. And one, they of course had been sold to different people, and one was living at the preserve, and the other one came, and the people from nature knew that they were going to be reunited, and they wanted to see, you know, is an elephant's memory really like they say that they don't forget? And so they had these giant, you know, like metal bars between their stalls, and they put them in this area where they're essentially fenced off from each other, but there's holes so they can put their trunk through and they can actually get really close to each other, because they didn't want to have a hostile reaction when they put them together. And it's like the most touching video ever. They're just pushing so close to each other, they actually bend the steel between them, and they almost can't open the gate to let them together because they're bending this steel. And then they turn them out, and they get to go to a stream, and they start bathing themselves. And the one who's lived there, of course, has been able to do this for a long time, but the other one, who had been, you know, in really small stalls, and imagine if you're trying to keep an elephant in your garage, cement floors and that kind of stuff. And she actually got to be out in the wild. She has a severe limp because something happened to her. But she's there, and she gets to hang out in the grass, and you can donate to the elephant preserve. And you can go visit it, and I haven't visited it yet, but I just love the whole idea that someone is watching out for the elephants of the world.
I saw a video on like this guy who raised his lion cubs, and they let him run out into the wild, and he went there to visit him, and the lion recognized him and jumped up onto him and everything like that. And it was like,
I love when wildlife is well taken care of and we haven't destroyed it all.
You have to watch on Netflix the animal series, something about animal couples, unlikely animal couples. Cutest thing ever. Just watch it.
All right.
It's on Netflix.
I'll put it
Can I
down.
have a question?
Yes.
Can we ride the elephants at the elephant preserve?
No. Let me tell you why.
That's why you go to the circus.
Yeah, I read
Riding
one,
the
I rode one at the
elephants
Renaissance
at the
Festival.
elephant preserve would be like anti-preservedness, because they're supposed to be in retirement, right? That'd be like anti-preservation. You can love them and take pictures of them and sponsor them.
But we can't like be with them at all.
That's why you go to the circus. Unlikely animal pairs.
Unlikely animal couples.
So it's like a nursing home for
It
elephants.
is so cute. It's like this, like it made me cry almost. It's so dang cute.
Okay.
And it's sad.
All right. So the big deal about the Vedic Age is these texts called the Vedas, which we're going to get to in a couple pages. But the Vedic Age, so I'm all the way back at 1500 BCE, because the last time we were in India was Indus. So I'm saying, okay, after Indus, what happened? The Vedic Age. And I'm just reminding you about where we are in history. And that happened from 1500 to BCE. And Veda itself means text, as in book. But remember that books are not bound like, it's like scrolls and tablets and that kind of stuff at this time period. And the important part about the Vedas are the Veda texts are the root of Hinduism. And then I'm going to remind you of these people. Remember before on the Indus slide where I had, it looks like the swastika, and they do call it something else, and I can't think of the name of it. And we talked about the Aryans before, so I'm reminding you about the Aryans. The Aryan people is actually not a name of a race or a people. It's a name of people who came from, let's see where they came from. They came from the Hindu Kush area, so up here. And they migrated into India, and they became called the Aryans. And because their name, A-R-Y-A, means pure, Hitler thought it would be a great idea. It also means noble. Hitler thought it would be a great idea to try to emulate what he thought were the Aryan race, because he thought they were a race of people who were pure and not polluted by, the people he doesn't like, Jews. So he corrupted their name. They're not actually a race of people. It's just a migration that took place from this farther north area into India at 1750 BCE.
How did Hitler get into his mind that it was fair skin, blonde hair, blue eyes?
And what did Hitler look like?
Didn't he have dark hair, dark
Yeah, brown
eyes?
hair, brown eyes. Didn't he?
I know.
I had a teacher from Miss Davidson, and they're doing Holocaust stuff, and I was just correcting it, and it said, what's the name that Hitler used for this pure, and he said Aryan, but I remember when he said that wasn't real.
Yeah, they're not really a race of people, but he thought it meant, this was a pure race of people, so I'm going to use this word. It does mean that. By the way, Arya changed to an I, and it became the origin of the country name Iran, and it also became the origin of the country name Ireland.
I thought that Hitler hated the Jews because they killed Jesus.
Hitler hated the Jews because he hated the Jews. He also hated homosexual people. He also hated mentally challenged people. He would go into areas, and you know how we have nursing homes, and he'd go through nursing homes and places where you'd keep mentally challenged people, and he'd just exterminate them. Stalin did it too.
I have a question though. Aren't these people from these areas, he wanted the blonde hair, blue eyed people, right? Are they blonde hair, blue eyed? I was just gonna say.
No, they're dark-haired, dark-skinned, because think about where they live in the world. Okay, so we know about the Aryans through the Vedas. They are the people who write down the Vedas. They are a pre-literate society because they exist before writing, and then when they develop writing, they write down the Vedas. And Vedas, you can give them another name of hymns. Not hymns like singing, but hymns, they're all about the Hindu gods. This is how we know this god has this many arms and this many heads and has this kind of personality. It's from the Vedas, we know that. And part of the Vedas are the Mahabharata and the one you read, the Ramayana. And I have these spellings on a later one, so I don't have to spell it right now. The Aryans' reminder that they had, despite that India was a primitive culture when they came in, they had a couple advantages for populating the area. And one is they had metal-tipped weapons, so they were beyond stone and they had moved to metal. And they had war chariots. And we've talked about this way back in Indus, because remember the fall of Indus happens because the Aryans invade. And the Vedas tell about their victories over irreligious, inferior people, because the Vedas are all about belief in the gods, especially the Hindu gods. And they're pastoral, they depend on cattle and other animals like sheep and goats. They move around from place to place. And they're warriors with their horse-drawn chariots. That's kind of their big advantage. And they kind of come into this area, and that ends way back, or not way back, that ends in 490 BCE when Alexander comes in. Remember how I said Alexander had the extent of his empire, and then he hit the Indus River, and then his people are like, no, no, no. And he's like, okay. And then they stop. Okay. So here's the whole detail about this. He starts to invade India in 327 BCE, and at that time Alexander thinks that if he gets to the end of India, he has conquered all of Asia. Is this true? According to the continent. Will he have a whole continent if he conquers just India? What do you guys know about the Asian continent?
It's really big.
It's vast. It is really big. So he starts in 327 BCE. You do not need to remember that part. And he proceeded as he did in his Persian conquest. So this was Alexander's strategy. City by city, they either surrendered without a fight because they knew of his horrible reputation, or if they did not surrender without a fight, he massacred them. And then who he did not massacre, he sold into slavery. You know, ruthless. A despot. So there was an Indian, I guess he'd be called a general. His name was Porus, P-O-R-U-S. Was holed up against the Indus River, and he was on the Indus River bank, and he actually did a really good strategy. So if the middle of my room is the river, here's Porus's side, and he took his whole army, and he did not have the same amount of size of force as Alexander, but he took them and lined them up all along the river. So Alexander would not have a place to cross with his force. And it would look like his army was everywhere. And that his army was so massive that Alexander could not defeat it. It's a really good strategy. It made them look more powerful than they were. So how does Alexander defeat them? Oh, and here's the other part I forgot to tell you about. Elephants. Go ahead.
So Porus lined up his army on the other side of the river?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so here's Alexander. You guys are Alexander. And you're grumpy, by the way, because you have walked 17,000 miles, and you've been gone 8 years traveling these 17,000 miles. So look how tired Anna is over there. That's perfect. She is exactly the perfect Alexander army member. So you guys get up against the river, and you're frightened because these guys have elephants. And you know that your cavalry is awesome, but your cavalry, your horses, will not charge against elephants. They are terrifying. This army also has horses, but they're used to the elephants because they've been able to smell them, live beside them, been trained to go next to them. They have this awesome strategy that the Indians did. They still get defeated because Alexander's a trickster. So you already know that. But he stops and doesn't go any further than that area. He doesn't push through. I'll tell you why. So I've got the elephants. I need to cross this river. So Alexander hides part of his cavalry on that side so that when he actually does find a spot that he can cross, Porus will think he's winning the battle with his elephants, and then the cavalry will sneak in when his elephants have kind of retreated and it's just left with the Indian soldiers. Because one thing, an elephant takes a lot of training to be in war. First of all, you have to catch the elephant. Then you have to subdue its spirit. I'll call that training. You have to train the elephant. And then you have to arm the elephant. And then you have to have someone that can ride on the elephant. So what this magnificent army would do is elephant, horseman, 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 and they're basically like the elephant guards, so that they're the light cavalry that can move really efficiently. This is the tank that can move not quite so efficiently, but you're in the way. Stomp, stomp, stomp. Okay?
Did he ever like step on the horses and kill them then?
Yeah, they stepped on people. And it is a big devastation to have elephants come along, and you know, your horse will not charge, and you fall off your horse, and then the elephant kills you. Yeah, this is why I love Elephant Warriors so much. It's just, I just love the idea. And think about it. Had Alexander's men ever been faced with elephants? Had they ever gone to the zoo or the circus and seen elephants? No, these are massively scary things. And they're doing what you guys want them to do. They're going in the directions you're saying go in. It's like, I don't know, the Native Americans when they saw gunpowder and they thought it was lightning that could fire out of a rod on command, that the white men were so powerful that you could make thunder and lightning come out of a device. and it would strike people down before they understood what gunpowder was and what guns were. Can you imagine the psychological defeat already? So he hides his cavalry, and the battle culminates then with his cavalry surrounds the Indians that are left in the area, because Porus had thought he was winning, so he pulled his elephants back, and he just had his ground forces that cost him less money and less training, and Alexander defeats him. But it was not a good defeat. What do we call this when the cost of your victory is too much?
Pyrrhic.
Yeah, a Pyrrhic victory. And it had not been easy, because his men, you guys, you were frightened of the elephants. People had been brutally trampled, they had been mangled by these elephants. So that is his last great battle. Alexander no longer is battling for empire, and that's the extent of his empire. So, and the reason that happens, so they defeat the Indians, but at the same time, his men start to mutiny. Alexander's men are like 8 years, 17,000 miles, facing 4,000 elephants? No. We may have defeated them, but we are no longer going to fight. And he actually realized that one of his most powerful generals was prepared to lead an uprising against him. And what would an uprising have resulted in for Alexander?
Death.
He would die. So he decided, okay, that's fine. We'll go back. And of course, because he's Alexander, he decides to go back the most difficult route to teach them a lesson, and also get in some battles along the way. So, you know, he doesn't, even though he seems like, okay, I'm giving up, he's still kind of he's definitely in charge. And he leads them on a circuitous route back to Alexandria.
Sometimes I think that you were born in the wrong time period.
How come?
Because you get so excited over all this elephant stuff, and you're like, oh, I'm so awesome.
Maybe I'll have my own elephant sanctuary.
Maybe in a
You
past
tell me
life you
sometime.
were an
Maybe the
elephant
water
warrior
you
man.
Maybe I was an elephant warrior man. That would be, I probably was the one who had to train the elephants. Okay, this is Sanskrit writing, and remember, this is my name in Sanskrit writing. I went to a little Sanskrit writing little device to put my name into it. This is what Sanskrit writing looks like. It is the standard, or the standardized Indo-Aryan language. So the Indus people that were there, and the Aryan people that were there, remember how we can't read the Indus River stuff because we haven't found a Rosetta Stone? Their script and Aryan script combines together to make Sanskrit. It is the oldest of the written languages of the modern European languages. It's the direct ancestor to our modern Indian languages. And I have to say languages because when you go to India, you're not going to speak Indian. You're going to speak Hindi and Punjabi and these other different regional languages, and they are all derived from Sanskrit. Sanskrit is the original language of the Vedas. They were all written in Sanskrit. And people can still read Sanskrit and translate Sanskrit language so we can read the ancient texts like the Vedas. And these are all like little sounds. I want you to notice this. This is the most, I think, important part of this slide, and it is the numbers. What does this one look like?
0.
A 0. Guess what the concept of 0? India. And this is really a 1, and yes, I know it doesn't look like our 1 anymore. Here's our 2. Remarkably the same, isn't it? We say that we have Arabic numerals because the Arab people are who we actually took numerals from, but guess who they took it from? The Indian people. 2, and then 3, and 4 doesn't look like this anymore, and 5 looks like a Y, and 6 doesn't really look like this anymore, and this is actually 7, and this is 8, and 9 looks backwards. But this is where we got our numerals that we write, and they have morphed a little bit.
Is there one looks like a 9?
Yes, it does. And this one looks like, you know, like a 6-year-old wrote it and they put it in the wrong direction. I don't know. 4 is kind of intriguing to me. Looks like a little knot. All right, so here's about the Vedas. They're written in Sanskrit. They're the religious text that's the Hindu core of beliefs. You have a bunch of them, so let me go through them. There are 2 kinds of text, Shruti and Smriti. You don't need to know about that part. But a Veda has the Samhita, the Brahmana, the Aranyanka, and the Upanishads. Upanishads tell you about the relationship of the soul to Brahman. Brahman meaning the God that is in everything. So one thing about Indian religion, Hinduism especially, we call it polytheistic, but really they think the spirit of Brahman, or Brahma as it's sometimes called, is in everything. So it's like there is this one single God essence that is in all of the gods, and they have a trinity, like Christianity has a trinity. We'll get into that more later. So as part of the Smriti, you have the sutras, you have the Ramayana, which we read. I put a little circle around that one. The Mahabharata, so here's the name of that one. And I have let me see what my detail is on the Mahabharata. It's the longest epic poem. It has over 200,000 individual verse lines, 1.8 million words in it. Remember the Odyssey? If you take the Odyssey plus the Iliad, which is about its size, and you times that by 10, that's the length of the Mahabharata. The Iliad and the Odyssey, length times 10. Both of those together, and that's how long it is. Now, we read a tiny little baby Ramayana, but the real Ramayana, which has 7 books and they're all really long, it's like 4 times that length. Here's its importance. Its importance is it is equivalent to the Bible, the works of Shakespeare, Homer's, both his epics, the Iliad and the Odyssey,